This is the hardest hike I've done in several years. All right, holy shit. I got off trail big time and I hit a solid patch of ice and snow. I'm exhausted. I ran into the fucking trail. So it looks like it's snow free from here on up. Hello and welcome back to another edition of the Hiking Journal. In this episode, I take a winter hike up along the San Jacinto Desert Divide to climb to the summit of Spitler Peak. Now, hiking in winter can have its risks and rewards. It's usually far less crowded during the colder winter months, and it makes for a quiet and surreal experience. But sometimes hiking alone in winter can also have its inherent risks. Since there's fewer people on the trail, if you do get lost or hurt, it'll be a lot longer before help arrives. And with a colder winter, potential snow or ice or sub-freezing conditions, your situation gets a lot worse a lot faster than on a warm spring day. Now, icy terrain is a common denominator on a lot of slips, falls, and deaths up here in the higher altitudes of the mountains in Southern California. Over the last few years, several hikers have fallen to their death on sections of trail where during the summer months it wouldn't have been as dangerous. The section of the Pacific Crest Trail along the San Jacinto Desert Divide seems to be especially problematic as the steep slopes ice up, leaving long side-hill crossings with treacherous runouts to rocky terrain below. A hiker died in a fall near Tahquitz Peak in the San Jacinto Mountains recently, and here's a story written by Paul L. Bonnie Bergio of the Palm Springs Desert Sun. A hiker died on Sunday after an apparent fall on rocky and remote terrain near Idlewild. The death is the latest in a spate of recent hiker and climber deaths and rescues that have led one law enforcement agency to warn people to take precautions if hiking during winter. Riverside Sheriff's Department deputies from the Hemet Aviation Station responded to a 911 call about a fallen hiker at about 2 p.m. on Sunday. A rescue helicopter located the hiker in a remote area of the South Ridge Trail near Tahquitz Peak in the San Jacinto Mountains. Now, I've been up to the South Ridge Trail a few times, even in winter, so this one kind of hit home. The terrain where the hiker's body was recovered was rocky, steep, and accessible only by helicopter. It appeared the hiker had fallen and sustained major injuries. Medical personnel aboard the helicopter were hoisted down to the hiker's location and declared the hiker dead. The deputy said the terrain did have some ice and snow, which they believe played a role in the fall. And in this article just released about a year ago in January 2021, it was published in Alta Ask. I don't know what that is, but it must be a blog of some kind. Anyway, Louis Farr writes, "They crossed a wildflower-covered grasslands and ascended through stands of oak and pine, sometimes trudging through howling winds and ankle-deep snow that took them by surprise. This was Southern California, after all, where the first 700 miles of the PCT is known as the Desert Section." On the morning of March 27th, 2020, Trevor Layer and his two new hiking companions, Cody McMayo and Janik Loeffler, were hiking a section of the Pacific Crest Trail between Spitler Peak and Apache Peak. The sun came out and the wind almost died. It was the perfect blue sky, Cody recalls. There was a very light snow on everything, maybe a quarter of an inch. It was quite the beautiful morning. But that also, I think, lulled us into a false sense of security. At about 9:30 a.m., as they turned a corner onto the Apache Peak section of the trail disappeared under what, at this high altitude, was 2 to 3 feet of snow. They checked their maps. If they crossed a small clearing and headed around another corner, they'd be fine. Janik, who was about 10 steps in the lead and the lightest, made it across the precipitous slope to a stand of trees. But as Trevor crossed, he slipped on ice hidden beneath a top layer of powder. He stopped and tried to stabilize his footing. Then his feet went out from under him, and he fell onto the snowy trail. For the briefest time, he managed to stay in place. Then, suddenly, he began sliding feet first, gathering momentum until he hit a rock and began cartwheeling into an icy gorge. "I tried to get to him," says Cody, "but I couldn't. There was really no way that he could slow himself down. It was a funnel down a rocky chute, and once he started sliding, I started yelling. Janik turned around, and just then we watched him go down the chute, tumbling off the rocks." Now, Cody dropped his bag and hit the emergency beacon to call 911. They had lost sight of Trevor, and for 10 to 15 minutes, they shouted into an echoing silence, also trying his phone, which he didn't answer. Frightened that he might slide too, Cody yanked the straps off his backpack and tied his wrist to the nearest tree branch. Across the clearing, Janik pulled a length of cord from his gear and did the same. Then they waited to be rescued. Riverside Mountain Search and Rescue units operating through the Riverside County Sheriff's Department warned about a flurry of harrowing accidents in March and April of 2019. Enough in one spot on the Apache Peak Trail that rescuers from the unit posted themselves at the trailhead to warn hikers of safety conditions on the upper slopes. In one incident, a male PCT hiker fell 120 feet down a slope. Another broke an ankle at the same spot. There have been 11 deaths on or near the trail in California, 8 of those in this desert section. Idlewild-based volunteer wilderness ranger John King, known as San Jacinto John, hikes or runs trails daily, produced his San Jacinto Trail Report. On March 20th, 2019, he noted that ice at Apache Peak, the mile 169.5 section, had led multiple PCT hikers to turn back. I tell PCTers, it's the most dangerous section of the PCT, says King. Okay, real quick, there's this little thing about San Jacinto John. He's legendary up here in this part, the San Jacinto Mountain region. He lives in nearby Idlewild and takes some seriously tough hikes and even tougher conditions up towards San Jacinto Peak and the trails nearby in full winter mountaineering conditions. Now, every PCT hiker I've ever run into knows of him and knows of his YouTube channel. The information he puts out is invaluable to hikers in this area. He also maintains some hidden trail cams in the mountains where he's captured some stunning images of not only mountain lions, but the occasional black bear that is extremely rare in this section of the San Bernardino National Forest. Okay, so I'm an experienced hiker and backpacker. I know just how dangerous it can be up here along this stretch of the PCT, and I have all the necessary gear, right? So I should be risk-free, or at least enough to be able to take a winter solo hike to the top of Spitler Peak. After all, it's not the tallest peak in the region, and it hasn't snowed up here in a while, so it shouldn't be too bad. I've also been up this trail before. Now, mind you, it was in the summer a long time ago with Dave, but I did have a good idea of what I was getting myself into. The only thing that's going to be tough today was the howling Santa Ana winds that had decided to perch themselves over the Southland for the last few days. Now, that's nothing a little wind chill couldn't block out, right? So first thing Monday morning, I hit the road and drove up Apple Canyon Road to the start of the trail up to Spitler Peak. Well, good morning and welcome to another edition of the Journal. Today we're going to be taking a drive out toward Idlewild, the San Jacinto area. We're going to be hiking up a trail called the Spitler Peak Trails. We're going to head up to Spitler Peak. And but first we got to get through Garner Valley. Another Jeep went by, so we got to wave at all the Jeepers. Garner Valley is about 4,000 foot, 4,500 feet of elevation. Just, I guess, to the west side of the Desert Divide, which is the main series of peaks that separates, I guess, the 10 freeway from, I don't know, I guess, Highway 74, I guess. And it's a range of mountains that includes Mount San Jacinto and Ansel Rock and Tockwitz Rock and Tockwitz Peak. And there's a whole bunch of series of peaks. There's Apache Peak, there's 2 of them. There's also Spitler, where we're going today. There's Pine Mountain. There's several. Lion Peak. I think there's a total of 9. And so we're going to the 5th largest mountain in the range today, which is Spitler Peak. It's a round trip hike of about 10 miles, and it includes about 2,500 feet of elevation gain. And it's going to go through a burn area. The whole area was devastated by the mountain fire in 2013. So it's been, I guess, 9 years, almost 8.5 years since the fire. And I'm sure a lot of it is still in the regrowing process. I'm sure it'll look pretty bad, pretty burnt. But what we're going to have today, which is going to be interesting, is a really fierce Santa Ana wind condition that's blowing from the northeast this direction. So wind speeds 30, 40, maybe even 50 mile an hour, we'll see, especially when we get up toward the ridgeline. But anyway, I got to keep my eye out here for Apple Canyon Road, which is the road I have to turn to get to the trailhead. It should be coming up here in a minute. But in the meantime, I'm going to drive through a little bit more of Garner Valley. I'll show you what this looks like. It's gorgeous up here. Now this is where we main part of Garner Valley opens up. In fact, to the right of me, up on the hillside there, that's all the San Jacinto range. Mount San Jacinto is up there, along with some other peaks. And we're going to be making a right-hand turn on Apple Canyon Road here in a second. Off to the left is Lake Hemet, which is one of the higher elevation lakes for this area. And what's nice about Lake Hemet is they have bald eagles here. It's one of the few areas in Riverside and San Bernardino that actually has a nesting population of bald eagles. And every year the National Audubon Society and the United States U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, they come out here and they actually do a bald eagle head count. So that's kind of cool. So we're going to be making a right-hand turn here any moment. It's coming up here. We're going to follow the road up to the right, up toward the trailhead for Spitler Peak. Well, we should be coming up on the Spitler Peak trailhead here any second. There's a big parking area on the right. I don't know what that's for. My guess is that's probably the parking area. I don't see any signs anywhere. I think this is the parking area, and the trailhead is probably right in front of us somewhere. Oh, in fact, there's the sign right there. It's hidden in the bushes there. You can't believe how windy it is here along the Spitler Peak trail. The wind is just coming down off the top of the pass there. Right on the other side of this divide is the Coachella Valley, like Palm Springs, that whole area. So because of the Santa Ana winds are coming in really hard from the northeast, and they're blowing right over the top of that pass and shooting right down this canyon. So it's gonna be really windy today. I'll show you what I'm wearing today. I'm wearing the Black Watch kilt today from Sport Kilt. On a windy day, I don't have my kilt pants, so hopefully it'll stay down on the camera today. I guess we'll find out. At least I'll get good breeze today, don't you think? Well, this ought to be quite the adventure today. This wind is something else. It's, like I said, 30, 40 miles an hour at times. Sustained probably 25 to 30. Hope I don't lose my hat today. And even though temperature-wise, it's only low 50s, it seems a lot colder. But I'll start warming up here in a minute when I start climbing the switchbacks. It's actually absolutely crystal clear out here. It's actually really nice, except for the wind. I just hope I don't lose my hat. I thought the trail was going to go to the left. It's actually going to go to the right. I mean, at some point it'll probably veer left, but I'm kind of making a run to the right side, and that's because there's private property on this side. It's kind of skirting the edge of the private property boundaries as we're heading up to Spitler Peak. You know, as I'm working my way across this little rock ledge, so I have a really good view of Lake Hemet way off in the distance. And the weather's been really weird the last couple of days. It's just the start of the second week of February. Valentine's Day is coming up in a few days when I'm recording this, and we don't ever get Santa Ana winds this early in the year. This is weird. Daytime temperature high at my house was 88 yesterday. It's supposed to be 90 today. Super Bowl's this weekend as well. And Anaheim, which is a city near Disneyland and in Orange County, they had the highest recorded temperature in the nation a couple of days ago. They were 90. So it's kind of weird. And I was a little nervous that even though it's still February, if it's warm enough, snakes will come out of their den. So there's a chance we might run into one today. You know, as I'm getting a little closer to the base of the mountain, getting a little more wind protection. The closer I get, the more rocks will be in between me and that vicious wind. But it's still working its way around. Some magnificent boulders back here in the distance behind me. Hopefully you can see that okay. And I got my first glimpse of Lake Hemet across the valley. All right, well, you have a little better view now of Lake Hemet. And to the left of that is Thomas Mountain. There's some great yellow post campsites up there. I've camped up there several times. Have a few episodes about that. The Ramona Trail also goes up the flank on this side of Thomas Mountain, and it ends up at Toolbox Springs Campground. I've done that one as well. All right, well, I climbed this little hill, and there's even a better view of Lake Hemet. The length of it, at least, you can see how the water's receded back from the tree line. Hopefully, eventually, one of these days, we'll get some rain, fill that thing up. Well, there's some charred remains of the mountain fire just below me off the mountain. Well, here's another remnant of the mountain fire. Looks like this giant pine tree caught fire, burnt down, snapped in half. There's also some more brush upslope. It's also burned. Looks like a lot of it has made a comeback, but there are still some patches that have yet to regrow. Still sad. Now, I don't know if you can make that out from here through the haze. That double humped peak in the distance, just to the right of Little Thomas Mountain, that's actually Saddleback, or San Diego Peak, and Majeska Peak. That's the Orange County high point. And just on the other side of that is about a 25-mile drive to the beach. Well, as I'm hiking along the trail, you can see some of the burned out remnants of trees, but this is my first ribbonwood manzanita that I've seen. I'm sure I'll be seeing a lot more of this later as we're continuing up the Spitler Peak Trail. Well, the wind stopped there just for a split second, and boy, what a huge difference that makes as I'm working my way up the canyon. I'll give you a glimpse of what I have to look forward to as I'm heading my way up. PCT is above me to the right, so I'm slowly but surely getting there. So I'm working my way up this, I guess this would be the west side of Spitler, overlooking this huge ranch down here. And believe it or not, in the sun, when the wind slows down, it's actually not too bad. As I'm getting a little higher up, the wind's getting more intense here. And what I wanted to show you is, there were several cars driving up the Apple Canyon Road when I was getting out of the Jeep, the trailhead. I was wondering where they were going. Sometimes there's small little ranches up here, but that's not a small little ranch. That's a compound. I don't know if that's a Zen retreat, Boy Scout camp, who knows. It's pretty impressive. You know, it's funny, you can hear the wind about 10 seconds before it hits you. You can hear the wind whipping down the canyon. And earlier, I heard this big, heavy gust. And then about 10 seconds later, it hit me. So I'm working my way up toward the top here. I got several hundred feet to go, maybe 300 feet to go to get to the PCT. That's 300 feet of elevation gain, not distance. But you can hear the wind. I think I'm going to have to, want to get a little higher up, I'm going to have to secure my ball cap out of my pack. The wind's threatening to blow it all the way down to Lake Hemet. Yeah, the wind is just howling down this canyon as I'm hiking through this ghost-like forest of burnt trees. And my hands are going numb. And I almost took my hat off a minute ago. When I start getting to the upper slopes, I think I'm going to have to clip on my ball cap and get out the beanie and gloves, I think. Holding on to this metal tripod just sucks the heat right out of you. Well, you get a little better view of what I'm looking at. My trail is working its way to the right. And I believe, from what I remember, we are not going to go to the left, but switchbacks up to the right. And up there, my friends, is the Pacific Crest Trail. And you never know what you'll find along the trail. Check this out. In this little crack, somehow surviving, is a fern. You know, it's kind of eerie. I'm hiking through this sea of just burnt trees. I don't think any of these are coming back. Very ghostly up here. And then I'm hiking all by myself today. Kind of gets me a little jittery. Well, what do you know? There's actually running water up here. Some pretty good sheets of ice right there. Shallow little pond, little puddle, as it flows over the ice sheets and works its way down this rock. Down below, I really didn't think I'd see water today. It's kind of nice. I'm sure this is probably the only place up here that has water this time of year with the amount of rain we've gotten so far. Okay, this section was a little tricky. It's icy, and there's a definite run out below, and it's got some pretty dire consequences if I slip here. But it's only a small section, just a little more than a mother may I jump across. I should be okay, right? Now, I've seen sections like this before. They look harmless, just a little bit of snow. But what is concealed under that few inches of that white fluffy stuff is a bed of ice from weeks of freeze and thaw cycles after the most recent storm. All it takes here is just a small patch of ice underfoot, and you'd slip and cascade cartwheeling head over heels down the slope to the left. A few years back, while snowshoeing up the north face of San Jacinto Peak, I took a traumatic fall. While leading a group of guys near the summit on a clear winter day, I stopped to catch my breath on a steep slope and rested my forehead on the ends of my trekking poles. Looking down, I noticed a weird blue light coming out of the previous holes I'd made. Then it hit me. It's ice. I yelled down to my partners to stop right where they are and don't come up this way. Seconds later, I heard a crack and saw a fissure line open up just about 10 feet above me on the slope. A second later, the whole snow slope gave way and sent me sliding feet first down the slope. Now, not having an ice axe or crampons to self-arrest, I shot downhill feet first in my slippery Gore-Tex pants like I was on a toboggan. As I quickly gained speed, I knew I was in trouble. I attempted to jam my trekking pole into the slope below me. Now, I had done this once before up San Gorgonio, but this time I accidentally caught the tip of my pole and my body weight ripped me right past it, tearing my right shoulder from the socket. My right arm now flailing about out of joint, I was fortunate I was able to roll my ankles over and dug in all 4 sawtooth rails of my MSR snowshoes, and I glided to a stop. Holy shit. I tried to put my arm back in the socket, but it was locked. Now, knowing that I needed to use it to get back down the rest of the way, I gritted my teeth, and I made one big windmill motion with my arm, and I popped it back in. Luckily, I was able to make it down the rest of the slope to safer terrain in Tamarack Valley, a total fall of over 700 feet. Now, how do I know that? Well, I had my GPS on my pack, and it tracked the descent that I had mapped when I got home. The guys I was hiking with managed to make it to a less dangerous route, and eventually made it all the way up to the peak. I was exhausted, so meanwhile I headed down to Round Valley and sat in the snow next to an X-rated snowman and had some hot soup to warm up while I waited. In fact, I wasn't the only casualty that day. Another hiker fell nearby and broke his femur mid-shaft and had to be placed into a traction splint and on a rescue sled before carrying off the mountain by 2 park rangers. I even helped carry one edge of the basket up the steep path to the tram mountain station, where we caught the tram back to the lower lot, where an ambulance waited. I had to drive home with my dislocated shoulder, and I was placed on light duty at work for the next 6 weeks. Well, I just took a tumble right there in that little ice patch. I was trying to go high, go around it, and slid down, and I almost slid off the cliff right there. I would have ended up sliding down that rock probably a good 50 feet That could have been serious. You can tell where maybe other people have gone high and to the left and gotten around. That's definitely what I'm going to do on the way back. My camera took a pretty good knock. Hopefully it's still working okay. You can see from this angle, I tried to walk across that patch right there. Slipped, went down to the right, and you can see that's a pretty significant fall. If I were to hit those rocks right there in the water and then hit the ice, would have hit a 10-foot drop off down there, ended up in the brush. There's probably no way to get back up this slope. You know, when I was crossing that little icy section over that creek back there, I took a pretty good tumble. I fell to the right, and the edge of my tripod, the little handle grip, saved my camera or my phone from getting cracked, and I also fell on this part of the tripod as well, and scraped my leg up just a little bit, got a little cut on my knuckle, nothing major. But I tell you what, if I would have not been able to stop myself, I could have easily slid down. In fact, my ankles, both ankles, were hanging over the edge of that drop off. It was an ice chute 20-30 feet down to another little cliff that shot out another 20-30 feet, and it was all hard granite, iced over and slick. If I would have been able to stop, I would have slid over that section, fell 25 feet down onto granite and boulders and trees and solid ice. So I was fortunate. I was very fortunate. I was able to stop myself and just have that small little cut, and that's it. So going back, I got to be really careful. I have a trekking pole that I brought for the upper sections. I might get that out to cross that section again. And I'm definitely not going to go the way I went. I can go up and around to the left around it. I'm definitely going to go that way. I'm not going down that chute again. That was pretty scary. That's the last thing you need up here, is to get hurt. You know, 4 miles up the canyon, you know, in a place that nobody goes to. I was lucky today. You know, thinking back to that little mishap back there, it could have had some pretty serious consequences. I don't know why I didn't just walk around it. You know, it's only a 2-foot section. How bad could it be, you know? Worse than I thought, I guess, huh? I still got a long way to go. This is one big tree. It's come to injuries from the fire. Thank God for trail crews, huh? All right, well, here's another view of Lake Hemet. And that big sprawling compound back there. And you can barely make out a Diamond Valley Reservoir. Our trail is still going to the right through the field of burnt trees up there. Well, somewhere up there is the PCT. I'm getting closer. And that's not Spitler right there. It's on the other side. Oh, we're getting there. Well, I see daylight up ahead. I'm just crossing my fingers. PCT is up there. And not 3 more switchbacks to go. You never know. Haven't looked at the map in a while. I might still have a little ways to go. But I'm getting there. Looks like maybe up there. All right, well, I think this is the top. I see a sign up there. Looks like a nice sign. Pretty steep little section here. Looks like this is the PCT. And sure enough, it is. I've earned a break today. PCT north and south. Wow. And of course, what the view, look at this. Wow. And the wind. Hold on to my hat. Way off in the distance, the Salton Sea. All right, let's get back over here out of the wind. Over to this lovely sign I've been looking for the last 2 hours. Well, it's really windy up here. I don't know if you'll be able to hear anything, but this is my view along the Pacific Crest Trail heading south from the Spitler Peak Trail. That's where I came from. That road way down there. Apache Peak and San Jacinto is off that direction. That's the PCT sign right there where the trail is just spit out. I'm going to be heading behind me towards Spitler. Well, I tell you what, this is a well-deserved break. Oh, it's a steep climb coming up. I didn't realize it was going to be that difficult to get up here. But tell you what, I earned a break, that's for sure. That's the Pacific Crest Trail sign right behind me. That's the sign that says PCT North, it's that way, PCT South that way. The Spitler Peak Trail, the one that I took to get up here, is down that way. Palm Springs and all of the Coachella Valley are down that direction. If you go 20 feet that way, the wind's 50 miles an hour. Right here, it's nice. So I'm going to take a few minutes, get caught up on some hydration, and I think I might eat one of my meatloaf sandwiches now, take a break before I try the final ascent of Spitler Peak. Take a good break here, get caught up on hydration, have me a good old meatloaf sandwich at the Pacific Crest Trail junction. Well, I'm working my way up to Spitler, finally. I diverted off the PCT, and now I'm up here. This is really steep, and I'm really getting tired. But I've got some great views. A lot of snow to my left as you look over toward the Salton Sea's way in the corner over there. I don't know if you'll be able to see it or not. I still got a ways to go, but I'm getting there. I heard there's a fall summit. I'm not looking forward to that. Well, it looks like I've hit snow, and I've got some snowy and icy sections. Gonna have to be really careful here. I didn't bring my micro spikes. I didn't think I was gonna need them. I thought I read somewhere it was snow-free. So, wish me luck. Now, being up here along the PCT, this snowy, icy section looked really dangerous. Something must be wrong. Somebody posted on all trails the route was snow-free, except for little patches near the top. I must have missed a turn somewhere. Looking at my map, I noticed I was parallel with the summit, about 200 feet directly above me. I thought about turning around right here and calling it a day, but I still felt pretty good, so I decided to start climbing off-route, straight up the steep slope, using my hands to grab at branches, kick-stepping my boots into the softer mud and dirt. The snow patches were mostly ice and hard-packed consolidated snow, with no traction at all, but the dirt and duff sections weren't so bad. I managed to crawl and claw my way up the slope until I saw what was left of a slight used dirt trail heading up to the summit of Spitler. Alright, holy shit. I got off trail big time. I continued too far down the PCT and I hit a solid patch of ice and snow and I had to shoot straight uphill. And that was iffy too. I come up the hill a couple hundred feet. I'm exhausted. But guess what? I ran into the fucking trail. Whew. So it looks like it's snow-free from here on up. And while it might be steep, I don't care. At least there's no exposure. That was pretty hairy. Well, I have to admit, that was one of the scariest sections I've crossed in years. There was some ice with some good fallouts, runouts if I were to fall and slip. I had to go cross country, and yeah, the views are amazing, but shit, I don't know if it's worth it. I'm not that far from the top. I don't know if this is the fall summit or not, but I can just see sky ahead of me here. I'm tired. It's gonna be tough going down too. But if you look over there, that might be it. Well, I'm hoping that's the top of Spitler. It better be, because I'm pretty much done. I am spent. Well, I made it to the top of Spitler. Pretty windy up here, so you can imagine. Probably 20, 30 miles an hour. Nice cold breeze, feels good because I've been working the sweat. But it's chilly up here. I'm not going to be up here very long. One hell of a climb. Well, behind me is the top of Spitler. Oh my God. That's it right there. That's all I got left. And literally, that's all I got left. I'm exhausted. It's one hell of a climb. So looking south on the PCT, I'm gonna see if there's a benchmark up here, get a picture, and I'm gonna head down to a sheltered spot to take a break because I deserve it. Well, this is where I made my mistake. I'm on the PCT heading south. I didn't see this. You probably won't either. But immediately to the right, heading straight up that slope to those trees, that's the trees and the slope that heads towards Spitler. You do not want to head further south on the PCT like I did. You'll end up going up about a 300-foot scramble straight up in snow, and that was pretty hairy. So I don't recommend that. There needs to be a sign here or a cairn. And I'd do it, but I'm too tired right now. At least now I'm on the PCT. I feel a little safer now. I'm familiar with the trail between here and the junction of the Spitler Peak Trail. So I think I'm okay now. You know, I was going to mention this earlier since I got time to kill on the way down. There's basically two trails here up to Spitler Peak. The original trail, the one that's marked on my topographic software, and the current USGS 84 map is no longer there because of the mountain fire. It basically destroyed everything. So the California Conservation Corps, with help from probably volunteers, they reworked the trail. And when I was on All Trails looking at my route today, I downloaded a route from someone that had hiked up here, and I superimposed it over the top of my map from Terrain Navigator, which is the mapping software I use. And it wasn't even close. Starts at the same place, ends at the same place. All the middle is different. So if you happen to head up this way, make sure you download the correct GPS route or track file so you don't get off on the wrong foot, literally. And I don't know how you could really miss it. There's really only one trail now. There were no junctions between where I started and PCT, so I don't think you could really get lost, but just something to think about. Well, this was one hard hike. Not even back to the car yet. And I can tell you what I did. I hiked up to the right, worked my way over to the right in those rocks, worked my way back across the ridge line about halfway up the middle of that, went around the right side of that rock outcrop, went way back in the back, and then started up the switchbacks as they get closer to that. Actually, was over there. The switchbacks that went up are over there. Worked my way up to the PCT, which is right there. And then I scrambled my way up to that. One hell of a hike today. I'm tired. Well, I tell you what, there's nothing like the excitement when you get married, when your children are born, or when you finally reach your vehicle after one hell of a hard hike. Well, I'm finally leaving the Spitler Peak trailhead, heading home. I have to admit, this is the hardest hike I've done in several years. This is a lot harder than I anticipated, and I don't know if I wasn't in shape for it, or who knows. It was pretty steep most of the way, which I knew, you don't get 2,800 feet of elevation gain by going on a flat trail. But that last scramble up to Spitler, when I got off the PCT and got kind of lost a little bit there, that was tough, man. And then when I slipped and fell, I thought I was gonna die right there. I thought I was going down that steep cliff, and the only thing that saved my ass was my tripod. My tripod's got a big handle that sticks out, and I had it in my right hand, and I fell on my right side, and I was able to, when I fell, shove that thing through the ice, and it lodged in the ice, and I was able to maintain a grip on that tripod, and that's the only thing that saved me from sliding down, because both my legs from calf down were dangling over the edge of that, and it was all ice and slick granite. So if I wouldn't have had that tripod, I don't know if I would have been able to stop myself from sliding off the edge, and then probably suffering a concussion or a head trauma, and maybe breaking a bone, breaking an ankle, who knows. And today was a tough day. And then when I got off trail a little bit on the PCT, I don't know what happened there. I guess I wasn't paying attention, I missed it, and decided to just shoot up straight to the peak. And I was fortunate I was able to kind of connect the dots, and I was able to hop from bush to bush and from rock to rock and avoid some of the icy patches. But even the rocks weren't completely dry. They were wet and they were icy too. I just tried to find a spot that had an edge on it that I could put my foot behind so I wouldn't fall. That was a scary part. That was a scary hike today, especially by yourself. I think if I had to do it again, I might have turned around. It wasn't smart today, but I made it. Lesson learned, I guess. Oh well. At least I'm heading home now. I'll be home in about 45 minutes to an hour. I don't know what's for dinner. We'll see. I'm definitely going to take some Motrin tonight because I'm going to need it. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed this episode. This was a tough one. The hike to Spitler Peak out here in the San Bernardino National Forest. Anyway, take care. We'll see you next time. Bye-bye. When I got home, I looked at the All Trails reviews again. It gets rocky and steep. The very last part takes you to the ride up the PCT, up a steep scramble with soft dirt and precarious footing. There's no obvious trail I can make out. I didn't attempt the summit because I was alone and not confident I wouldn't get hurt, going up or down. The views off the ridgeline once you connect to the PCT are phenomenal. Going down felt even more treacherous than going up. Because of this narrow trail, if you trip at the wrong time, you're at risk of falling off the edge. Well, that'll do it for this episode of the Journal, my climb up Spitler Peak along the San Jacinto Desert Divide. Now, looking back, I realized I made several mistakes. Since I had been up this trail before, I didn't read all the recent trip reports on trail conditions, and I didn't really inspect my gear prior to the hike. When I got home, I noticed the soles of my oboe sawtooth boots were very worn, the grippy nubs worn almost down to the bone. No wonder I had slipped. I also had my micro spikes laying on the top shelf of my gear closet. Lots of good they did me up there. Thinking back, taking a solo hike up to the higher altitudes, especially in this section of the PCT in winter, probably wasn't a good idea either. Even though I hate to admit it, I should have asked Dave or Jerry to tag along with me on this one. Now, I always hike with my Garmin inReach. but I shudder to think what would have happened if I would have been knocked unconscious or been unable to activate the emergency response. Anyway, it's a learning experience. I guess I'm not going to forget about this one for a long time. In the next episode of the journal, I take a solo hike, at a much lower elevation this time, near Julian, California, to visit the iconic Three Sisters waterfalls, located deep in the San Diego River Gorge. In this episode, I encounter a rather long, snowy descent along the road into the canyon and a bright, sunny day to enjoy one of San Diego's most beautiful waterfalls. That'll be coming up in the next edition of the journal. Oh, and don't forget to click and subscribe to the channel and tap that notification bell to get the latest editions of the journal. If you have any questions or comments, please leave a note below. Anyway, take care and have a safe hike. Bye-bye.